And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us today. We do have a special guest. We have the other end of the race for 21st Judicial District Court Judge, Mr. Colt Four. Colt, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful.
Well, as we talked about before the show, we learned the unfortunate news that you might have to do something after the election, have a little elective surgery, or
yeah. I mean, I just I couldn't do it before the election, but I'm gonna have to have foot surgery afterwards. It's just it's something I've been putting off, but hopefully after the election I won't be wearing out as many tennis shoes or as many car tires, so that way I'll have a little bit of time off my feet.
So, and we all know how that goes. You put it off too long, and all of a sudden it turns serious, and you're like, God, I should have taken care of that. But tell us, we're getting into it. We want to inform voters about what's going on and who's involved in these races. So first, let's start. I don't want to say let's start from the beginning. I was born, but let's start a little bit early life, where you grew up, where'd you go to high school, that kind of thing.
Sure. I was born and raised in Livingston Parish in Denham Springs. My family's been here for a few hundred years. I was educated in the public school system here. I graduated from the public school system here. I went to Northside Elementary, Lewis Vincent Elementary, Denham Springs Junior High. Then I started out at Denham Springs High and got recruited to play baseball at Live Oak High. Moved to play baseball at Live Oak High. Ended up graduating from Live Oak High. My sister, she went to school here also, Denham Springs High. And, we've been in Livingston Parish for a while. So we have had connections with multiple high schools here. Played ball here, played baseball, basketball. Then after graduating in Live Oak High, I ended up going to LSU, took an academic scholarship to LSU. And then after that, moved on ahead. My family owned a couple businesses here. We owned a manufacturing business. We owned a farm. And also we had the car wash here when it was Plantation Car Wash. So grew up working at the car wash, working on the farm, working in the manufacturing business. And my grandpa was also a land surveyor here. So a lot of people knew him with the land surveying company.
So you stayed pretty busy and involved in the community during your time here, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, definitely. We with all the organizations and clubs we had, my grandpa was the auctioneer for the 4-H auctions, so we would always go to those and playing a lot of baseball games. Sometimes I would have to go pick up some slack and go to work in a basketball uniform or baseball uniform at the family business, but it was exciting. It was fun. We got to meet a lot of people and become engaged in the community. And I love living here. Now I'm raising my little daughter here, and we got a little boy on the way in January. So I love our Christian community, and I'm happy to be back.
So you got into my next question. As you said, you are married. So let's back up a little bit and talk about law. You are an attorney.
Right.
You do work here in town, correct? Here in Denham Springs.
I do. After law school, I actually showed up at Fayard and Honeycutt Law Firm. I showed up every Tuesday for 6 months and knocked on the door and said, I knew they weren't going to be there on Monday mornings because they usually had court on Monday mornings. I knocked on the door and said, when can I go to work? When can I go to work? And finally, after about 6 months of that, they said, they looked at me and said, can you start next week? And I was like, wow. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Let's get this thing started. And I was really excited about it. I clerked for them in law school, and those guys were known around here for doing a lot of larger cases, nationwide. So it was a great opportunity, and I was excited to get to work.
So let's back up a little bit. You were at LSU Law, correct?
No, I went to Southern University Law Center.
Okay.
So I was at LSU undergrad, and then I took a year off, worked in the insurance industry for a little while, and then I went to LSU Law. But before I went to Southern University Law, but before I went to LSU, I actually went to college in Mexico. Between my junior and senior year in high school, I went to Monterrey, Tec de Monterrey, and Monterrey High School in Monterrey, Mexico.
Okay.
And so after that, then came back, did my senior year in high school, graduated, and went on to LSU.
Real quick, how'd you end up in Mexico?
My family had some business partners, and they were trying to get some products made in Mexico for a certain product that we had. And just ended up, they said, hey, would your son like to come to college down here? We can get him, into the university. and it was the same university that Presidente Fox went to whenever he was the president of Mexico.
Okay.
So I jumped at the opportunity, went down there, 17, didn't really know anything about it, but it was a great experience.
So former athlete, community involved, and obviously a bit of work ethic, having to get after it, going down to Mexico to do what you had to do to help the family business. But also an attorney. Where did that come from? So where did you first sort of think like, I want to be a lawyer?
Probably when I was at LSU. Growing up playing ball, I was very competitive, and everybody just always joke around with me like, hey, you're too serious when you're playing ball. And I'm like, I'm just competitive and that's how I am. In the courtroom, I was able to bring that competitive atmosphere. And I took a business law course at LSU, and the professor, Phil Bro, he was very adamant, like, hey, you should go to law school. You should go to law school. He actually taught my dad also.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he told my dad, he was like, man, you should be an attorney one day. And then he found out my dad didn't know how to spell and was like, yeah, that's out the window. But yeah, and he was kind of adamant about it. You should definitely think about law school. I took a couple business law classes from him. I started interning at LSU for a couple law firms in Baton Rouge, trying to, see if it was something I would be interested in. And then whenever I graduated political science major at LSU. And then I was like, well, had some, education in the political side, and then finally I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go take the LSAT, and got into law school. And after that, it was kind of like went through law school, and it was just that was it.
So you first tell us a little bit about law school. What was that like? Because everyone, when you talk to lawyers about it, it's always described as an experience in and of itself.
Yeah, some people. I always try to look at the best of things. I mean, I look at the relationships I made while I was there, the professors I got to, study under, and the different, even whenever Bass Pro came to Denham Springs, I did my thesis in one of my classes on the TIF, the tax increment financing, with our local business, because that was kind of interesting, that's at home. So my law school professor allowed me to write a thesis for a class on our Bass Pro case and the Cabela's case whenever they came to get financing for that.
Sure.
So, and law school itself, I just tried to make the best of it, try to be friends with everybody. And even, when it was tough, the first year, but a lot of people, it might not be for them, but I just try to look at the positive aspects of it and just took everything as how it was, joined some organizations while I was there. And, like lifelong friends, some of those people I met in law school were, they were all invited to my wedding and things like that. So, and I still talk to some of my classmates daily.
So you're in the trenches with them, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, everybody says in the trenches, but I mean, really, you're either going to go to work 9 to 5 right after college, or you're going to go to a higher education. So I just kind of took it as, I'm going to treat this like a job. I'm going to go to school 9 to 5, and then sometimes, it might not have been 9 to 5, it might have been 8 to 6, but I just took it as a job and just took it that away and looked at it. Well, I could be working somewhere at something I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed law school. I took classes. You don't enjoy every class, but I tried to pick classes out that were actually interesting. I enjoyed, and I enjoyed the experience very much.
So, at Fayard and Honeycutt right now, what kind of law are you practicing?
Yeah,
or what do you focus on mainly?
Right. We do a lot of complex litigation nationwide. We do class action lawsuits, train derailments, plane explosions. My law firm did the train derailment in Livingston back in the day, and that kind of put them on the map. So we still do those all over the nation. Also, we are dealing with the Texas brine sinkhole right now, where the houses are sinking into the swamp from the brine mine being mined too close to the surface. We represent a lot of the governmental entities in Livingston Parish. So we represent gravity drainage number 2, gravity drainage number 1, gravity drainage number 5. We represent Livingston Parish Sewer District. We represent Ward 2 Water. And also I represent Livingston Gas. And obviously with the flooding and everything going on, a lot of our residents around the area came to me to try to recover money from their insurance companies after they flooded. And I was able to help a lot of the residents around here recover money that they wouldn't have been able to get. We had to file a lawsuit in federal court because we do a lot of federal court work. So they had to find an attorney to do federal court work. They came to me. I was able to help out a lot of the residents recover the monies needed to repair their homes. So mainly we practice nationwide, federal court, appellate court, and also district court here locally. I'd say 75% of our business is probably civil plaintiffs work. One of my law partners was the ADA and here in the parish, so he was assistant district attorney. So it was kind of a conflict for me to take criminal law cases for the first 6 years of my career. But after that, I was able, after he was no longer the ADA, I started taking criminal law cases and criminal defense to learn aspects of, be more familiar with the criminal side. So I've done both criminal and civil. Actually, and a little side note, about 4 weeks ago, argued a case in front of the Louisiana Supreme Court. That's going to be a landmark case. So.
Okay, and I'm guessing since that's still probably in discussion, you can't talk about it?
Well, no, I can talk about it. I can give you the facts of it. Obviously, the Supreme Court's still deciding it. Sure. I was fighting for a child who was given up for adoption at a young age. His biological father and biological half-siblings died in a tragic accident. And they were saying that since the child was given up for adoption, he was given up interfamily adoption for health insurance reasons. He couldn't bring the wrongful death or survival action on behalf of his biological father or biological half-siblings. So I don't know how they're going to decide. We're hopeful about it. We hope that, they say, well, just because you were given up for adoption doesn't make your brother and sister no longer your brother and sister, know. So the Louisiana Supreme Court specifically has never ruled on that issue. We did have some cases in the United States Supreme Court that we cited to. So it was a very interesting case. It had some other cases involved in Illinois federal court and different moving aspects. But with our cases that we do in complex torts, it was very exciting to do. I think about 6% of attorneys get to argue in front of the Louisiana Supreme Court.
Well, and congratulations, you're now one of the 6%. And so talking about that, I mean, thinking about the Supreme Court and getting to argue in front of them, but just getting to be a part of this firm. I mean, you said you clerked for them in law school. Was that something that you chose specifically because of their location, or what was the decision there?
Yeah, they were, a firm in my hometown, and I knew their reputation in the area. They've been great attorneys, everybody, a very respectable firm. I think I was the first associate they took in like 12 years. So I was like, I just kind of came along at the right time. My family knew of the firm, and they knew that, like I said, of their reputation. So I was talking to other firms at the time, but I was very adamant with that law firm that, hey, this is where I want to work. This is where I want to work. This is where I want to work. And finally, that door opened. I was just persistent at it, kind of like a lot of things that I do, very persistent. And I don't usually take no for an answer.
Well, obviously not, because here you are after about 10 years, and so fortunately or unfortunately, I suppose there has to be a winner in a political race. So you are running for judge. Tell us a little bit about, what made you decide to run? What was going through your mind, and what was the conversation both professionally at the office and at home?
Yeah, professionally at the office, I found out that there was going to be multiple openings at the courthouse. So multiple judgeships were coming available, and I knew if I didn't take advantage of the opportunity now, then it would be a while before another opening came up. Just, logistically, because a lot of the judges up there are younger now, and they don't appear to be, going anywhere anytime soon. They could, but, chances are they're going to be there for a while. So the opportunity kind of hit me. I've got a great deal of trial experience. Some years I would do over 100 trials. So I was like, I went to the partners at my firm. I was like, look, guys, I'm really excited. I think I want to run for judge, and this is time for me, to move on. I thank them for all the experience they gave me, throwing me into the fire. Like 2 months after I was there, they were like, here, go try this case. And I was like, okay, where am I going? And they were like, you're going to Ascension. I've never been to Ascension Parish Courthouse, but I'm going over there to try a case, So, and then some days it would be like federal court case. They would walk in and say, hey, I need you to write a master plan for this class action. And I was like, yeah, they didn't teach us that in law school, But that was a conversation there, but they were excited about it. They were like, look, 100%, whatever you need, we're behind you. We support your decision. If that's the next step in your career you want to take, we hate that you're leaving the firm. You've been a great asset here, but if that's the next step you want to take, we'll support you 100%. And then on the, I guess, second question on the family side, it was go home, talk to the wife, say, hey, look, I think I want to run for judge. And my wife was like, well, I'm gonna support you 100% if that's what you want to do, but let's sit down and weigh out the pros and cons. So, the pros outweighed the cons, and it was like, well, it's a service position. We're you're putting yourself out there in the public spotlight and making decisions on behalf of the public. And, sometimes you got to send people to jail. Sometimes you got to send people to rehabilitation, or sometimes, there's not going to be a winner. You might have to tell a business owner, I'm sorry, but, I know, you're suing this other company, but you're suing a bankrupt company. So even if you get something, I mean, I can give you $100,000 judgment, but $100,000 of zero is still zero. And, it's a sad time, with a lot of businesses closing right now. And I know I'm gonna have to make those hard decisions, and I'm prepared to do that. But my wife was 100% behind me, and, my family, extended family, my aunts, my sister, they were all like, you have our blessing, and you have our wishes, and you'll have our support.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because you've said, there's hard decisions that you're going to have to make when you're thinking about becoming a judge. It's a two-part question. One, what has sort of attracted you to the bench outside of just the opportunity for advancement? And second, tell us a little bit about, as you said, it took about 6 years to get involved because there was a conflict there. So tell us a little bit about your experience and how that would affect your ability to be a judge. So, of course, the first question, why?
Right.
And the second question is, how does that why play out in your experience?
And the why is, in all honesty, we all don't have very long work life on this earth. I mean, we all have that short little time period from birth to death, and I think it makes a difference on what you do. And the main thing is, I was raised here. Now I'm raising my kids here. I want to make a difference in our community to better our community. I think I'm the best person for the job. I don't want to say I don't trust anybody else to do a good job as a judge, but I think that I have the right qualities to be a great judge. And as far as, the work experience and the 6 years, for about a decade, I've been practicing law and done a lot of litigated a lot of cases civilly. As far as the qualifications, the complex litigation I did, some cases I would represent over 400 clients to 1,000 clients at a time. So I was able to take the interest of those, representatives of that case and apply the law and usually get a favorable outcome on the other side. As far as the criminal cases, I've seen people who've just made mistakes. I represented one client. They were charged him with a second offense crime, and it was only because they got his middle initial wrong. He had never been charged with that crime before, but his middle initial was wrong on the pleadings and on the police report, to where they looked up another guy, same exact name, but different middle initial, and he was being charged with a higher offense. So, just those little aspects. I understand people make mistakes, and it might be the first time, but also we have some hardened criminals that, I don't feel comfortable walking around with my little girl on the streets, or, one of my other family members' nephews. So that's one reason, that's my main reason I want to be a judge. And I've watched these judges all over the nation, different courts, different jurisdictions. And I really appreciate the job that they do. And I think they do try to make our community better. And that's one reason. That's the main reason I want to run for judge.
So, we're going to have another two-part question here. And one is, like you said, you've been around to different levels of the court. You've been in front of a lot of different judges who have a lot of different methods, I guess you can say, a lot of different demeanors. First, I'm going to ask you these one by one instead of giving you the combo question. First, how does that experience with that variety of judges, how has that affected your mindset and how you would be a judge going into this race?
I think one of the main things is technology, because in different courtrooms, obviously, some of them have better funding than others. So everybody can't have the best state-of-the-art technology, but just because some of them didn't have the best technology didn't mean that you couldn't get in there and actually present your case better because of the access to the technology in the courtroom. Now, some judges would allow you to come in days before a trial. So like if we had a jury trial somewhere, in federal court, we could come in. It was mandatory for us to come in and set up all our electronics and test them out, rather than in some other courts, you wasn't allowed to go to the courtroom until the day of the trial. And then you're trying to set up all these electronic devices like TVs and, projectors. And you're just like, man, this would be so much easier if I had, a couple more hours to get this set up to present my case in a better way.
Sure. So to kind of wrap that up, I mean, it's one of those things where you would feel like you'd want to provide more time for people to really get their case set up better technologically wise.
Right. Right. It wouldn't be the time that they had to try the case, because trying the case is going to be the same, regardless of how long you have to set up. But it would be, the attorneys would be more prepared on that morning of trial, because the judge wouldn't be waiting and the jury wouldn't be waiting on court to start, because we're waiting on a technological difficulty or, something failing or something of that sort.
So obviously, in kind of a way, you answered the second question to this, which is, from an attorney's perspective and your experience, how would that affect how you treat sitting on the bench?
I think obviously everybody wants a judge to be fair and impartial. Everybody's going to give you that answer. But as a judge sitting on the bench, and as far as trying to streamline my trials and trial days, obviously if we can organize that to where the attorneys are more efficient in court, to where technology, we're not waiting on things that we could prevent days ahead of time. So like if a trial gets canceled and the courtroom's just sitting there empty 2 days before another trial is supposed to start, well, I think if you had like almost mandatory for that attorney to come in or his team to come in and test out the technology before that trial starts, I think that could benefit, our legal system to where it might could speed up the trials.
So you touched on something, fair and impartial, right? We are human. That's difficult. As an attorney, for the most part, attorneys become judges. Especially coming from some criminal law and some litigation and things like that, what do you feel like you have to do every day should you be elected to remain as fair and impartial as possible?
Well, I mean, I think the main thing is you go back to your morals. I'm a Christian. I want everybody to be treated, the same, no matter who they are. When you walk into my courtroom, it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or if you're, if you grew up in poverty. I think you need to be treated the same way. And another thing is too, I think it comes back to how would you want to be treated if you were in that position? And, as a judge and you're trying to better the community, if you think somebody can be rehabilitated and become a productive member of society again, well, then that's a lot better than us sending them to prison and, trying to, pay for them, pay for their meals and, just throw them in jail. Now, if we have somebody, like I've said before, that was, a hardened criminal, then that person has to be dealt with accordingly. But as far as fair and impartial goes, all attorneys, when they go in there, and every attorney has been in front of a judge that they thought was better or worse than another judge that they have been in front of. So I try to take that experience for the multiple judges I've been in front of and say, well, that judge, I might have had a bad case, but that judge still treated me fairly.
Sure.
Or I might have had a really good case, but man, that judge just he didn't pay attention to how really good my case was.
Right.
So whenever I look at those scenarios, sitting up there, I think I would bring that experience and, to the bench. Obviously we want separation of church and state, which is a big part to some people, but I can't tell people that I'm still not going to be a Christian when I'm on the bench. And that's one thing that you have to look at also.
So you've brought up a couple of difficulties in being a judge. In your opinion, as you run for this seat, what is the biggest challenge that a judge faces?
I think the biggest challenge would be the cases that come before you make a decision to hear all the facts. Because in the mainstream media, all we see are these cases that are decided, but we don't get to see all the evidence and we don't get to see all the facts. And we don't know what evidence was suppressed or not suppressed, because a lot of these things are under seal. So, you might catch, a judge might catch a lot of criticism if the mainstream media would take a case, even though they don't have all the evidence yet. So I think that's the biggest part of being in the public spotlight, but for a judge. And another thing is, you have to sleep well at night. So if you think that you went in there and you made a good faith effort to make the best decision and do the best job you could do, I think that's what the judges face every day. And if they know they made the right decision and they can sleep well at night, then I think, that's something to be admired. And, these judges are a revered population that are hopefully trying to do better for our community.
So let's talk about sleeping well at night. What was one of the most difficult cases that you had? And you don't have to give details necessarily about who was involved or anything like that, because the secondary question would be, due to that difficulty, how would you have handled it differently?
In other words, you're saying a case that I had in the past?
Yes.
I had a case in the past where what had happened was it was a young juvenile had had a case, and it was a discrepancy with with an adult, and it was a without getting into too much detail, there was some allegations made with the juvenile and the adult, and the adult was an elderly person, and they were put in jail for a while, and it came out that the allegations were made to where the adult was put in jail, and the allegations that were made by the juvenile's parent were unfounded, and the adult had to sit in jail for a long time. So with those allegations being made, they were trying to punish a grandparent. And in that scenario, if hindsight 2020, if you could have found some kind of avenue to prevent this man or this woman from having to sit in jail for a week before you could get it in front of a judge, it was they had bond reduction hearings, and the family was very poor, and they couldn't make the bond amount, so we had to get the bond reduced before he could get out of jail. If if there was some way, and I mean obviously a false police report or a false statement made, that's all the judge had to go on. Like, hey, they made a false statement, and you're trying to protect a juvenile. But if I could have changed some way to where the man wouldn't have had to sit in jail, or the woman wouldn't have had to sit in jail for a long period of time before it was found out that the allegations were false, well, obviously that's something that, looking back, hindsight, I don't know how we would change that in the court system, but find some way to where if this was a false statement, and somebody was going to jail for it, there was some way we could overturn that.
Did you know they were false at the time?
The family that hired me came to me saying the statements were false, and they needed to get the elderly person out of jail because they had medical issues, and they were like, look, these are not founded allegations. He wasn't even in the same city, or she wasn't even in the same city during these allegations, so it's impossible. So, I knew that as the attorney, so I filed, I actually went up to the office on a holiday and drafted pleadings immediately, but unfortunately they had to stay in jail for the weekend before we could get in front of the judge.
So trying to find a way to make sure your docket remains moving, make sure things are efficient and expeditious, so people don't get caught up in situations.
Right, and it was a bad scenario because it was a holiday weekend, and it was just hard to get anything moving. But that would be the one case where if I could change something, which I don't know if I could or not, I might have done everything legally possible to make sure that case got before a judge as quickly as possible. But if I could change something, it might have been out of my power, out of the judge's power, out of the law enforcement's power. But if I could have changed something, that's the one case I would have changed something.
So as we've gone through a lot of different things, take 2 minutes and pull it all together. Why, when people go out to vote, either during the early voting period, which starts next Friday, October 16th, or on November 3rd, why should they vote for you?
Okay. Pretty much, I'm a Christian conservative, born and raised here in Livingston Parish in the public school system. The main thing they need to know is that, I'm running on the type of experience I had, diverse experience. I've traveled the nation, practiced in federal court, appellate court, and district court, litigated complex cases. And the main thing is, I'm bringing criminal and civil experience. I represent the drainage districts. I know a lot of people understand that, they want a judge up there who understands land, understands the Corps of Engineers, understands drainage issues with the houses that flooded in our area. I mean, I know everybody was affected. A lot of people were affected by that. And if they weren't affected by it, they had a family member that was. So you want a judge sitting up there, you may never go to court. You may never, ever have to go to court for a criminal issue or a civil issue. But the judges are still up there making decisions whether the Corps of Engineers can dig a ditch, whether a person who blocked drainage has to remove that drainage. You might live 10 miles away from that drainage issue, but you want a judge up there who understands the floodplain and who's dealt with drainage districts and dealt with flooding in the past, and who's actually represented clients whose homes have flooded and tried to recover money for the same. And that's how it affects every resident in our district day to day.
So again, or to wrap it up, we have Mr. Colt Four here. He is a local attorney. He is running for 21st Judicial District Judge. and it is a 3-parish seat. It is Livingston, Tangipahoa, and St. Helena. So you would be trying cases in all 3 places. We do appreciate you taking the time, sir, to let the folks who will be voting either for you or for Mr. William Dykes to get to know you a little bit. And thanks again for the work that you do as an attorney.
Great. And I just appreciate if everybody get out and vote and exercise their right to vote, and appreciate their support. And I guarantee if I'm elected, I'll make you proud.
And there is still a few days until next Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. to register to vote online. The date to register in person has passed. One last time, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. Want to remind folks that we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. Please, to reiterate what Mr. Four said, get out and vote. It is your civic duty, and we appreciate you doing it, trying to make sure that we get the best folks into office. We do hope you all have a great day, and we will see you next time.